today's guest has a very interesting career that she's made that has to do with therapy. And so, what we're going to be talking about is everything that you need to know about finding the right therapist for yourself. There she is. I see you, Lauren. I'm going to invite you. Okay. Anyway, so Lauren has a background in mental health, and she'll talk about that. But she's made it there. I'm always relieved when it works.
Yay.
Yeah, it works. Good.
Okay, we did it.
All right. So Lauren, I was just saying, so you're a mental health professional who's had a very interesting pivot in terms of what you do. And when our friend Kim, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago, she told me about you, I thought this is perfect because mental health is such a huge issue, especially now,
Yeah.
and especially in my own community of people dealing with domestic violence, high conflict divorce, custody battles, co-parenting health. So one of the things that people are worried about the most are their kids. And they're like, I need to get my kid help. Like, I need to find a therapist for my kid. Can you talk about self-regulation first, and how that impacts finding a therapist for your kid? And then we'll talk about what you do.
Do you mean self-regulation, like when the children are not able to self-regulate, or
No, like you as the parent freaking out and being like, I need to get my kid help now,
I
now,
see
now.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So I understand that parents want to get their kids help. And I think in many situations, it's wonderful to get kids help. I think the piece that often gets missed is that the parents need to get help either first or also at the same time. So many parents, whether they're going through a high conflict situation or not, they see their children dysregulated or throwing fits or difficult to manage or suffering from anxiety, and they get into a panic, like you said, and they immediately say, I have to get this child a therapist. And that might be an effective method of treatment, but without the parents learning to self-regulate, learning to manage their own thoughts, emotions, behaviors, stressors, if anything, learning the same language that their child will then learn in his or her own therapy, you're only treating part of the problem. So, like, if the kid, in theory, is going to a wonderful therapist, which that's a different conversation altogether, and then is learning all the wonderful techniques, all the right strategies, all the right language and tools to manage his or her own stress, anxiety, behavioral tantrums, social issues, whatever. But then he goes back home and the parents don't understand how to also mimic, monitor, alter their behaviors. It's useless. You're wasting, you think you're treating the problem, but the parents, even if we don't think we're part of the problem, we are raising our child. We're in the same home. We have to learn the same tools, whether it's for our family or just for our child, or by the way, just for ourselves. Any change that the parents make is going to benefit the child.
Yeah. Okay, so now talk about who you are and what you do.
So I am a licensed therapist, licensed mental health professional as well. And I've been in the field for 30 years. And I've always worked in many different kind of settings and capacities, but always with families and always with children and parents. And after I was kind of ready for a new phase of my career and wanted to try to kind of pivot, but continue to help families and children, I never wanted to be a one-on-one therapist, a psychotherapist. So getting off topic for 1 second, what most people don't understand is that a therapist or a psychotherapist, it's this kind of synonymous. So going to psychotherapy is what we call therapy, like commonly, but it's different than physical therapy, occupational therapy. It's called psychotherapy. So I never wanted to be a therapist, a psychotherapist, because I never wanted to be one-on-one in a room with people hour after hour after hour. I leave that to the experts. But what always kept coming to me from the families that I worked with was everybody would say to me, well, we can't find a therapist. or, well, the therapist we have, it's not working. And I just kept thinking to myself, there has got to be a more effective, efficient way of educating people about what their options are and helping people to understand that if you're not with the right person, you are wasting your time and your money. And it's a lot of money, and it's sometimes years and years wasted just because they think they're in therapy, so it should work. And that is what all of the science indicates, that if it's not the right, genuine human connection between two people, the rest of it doesn't matter. The type of modalities, their expertise, their 25 years of experience, doing research, their, the published authors, whatever it is. If you or your child, or you and your spouse, or you and your, the co-parent don't connect well, both of you, with that individual, and really feel like you have a meaningful relationship and trust, it's not going to work. So my goal, so what I decided to do was, after years of having everybody come to me and say, where do we go? Who do we go to? How come this isn't working? And I was kind of doing it by default, organically, like connecting people, like a matchmaker, in a
I'm
way of like,
just about to say you're the therapy matchmaker.
yeah, I've been called that. It's so funny, like a clinical matchmaker, a therapy matchmaker. But as silly as it sounds, in essence, that's kind of what I do. I just kind of like, I'm not just saying, oh, your child needs a therapist. This therapist is a child therapist. That means nothing. It's like, you know, it's like I always equate it to like contact lenses. Like, I don't know why that always comes back to me, but for some reason it occurred to me years ago. Like, just because you can't see doesn't mean like, oh, I have a prescription, like use my contacts. Like, everybody's prescription is completely and totally unique in both eyes. And just because we both can't see distance does not mean that I can put your contacts in my eyes. So just because like, oh, this person's child is in therapy doesn't mean that person is going to be the right therapist for your child. It has to be a personality fit, a temperament thing, a sense of humor, like all the different nuances that I get into with people is how I match people. Not just, oh, I need a therapist who specializes in anxiety or who specializes in divorce. Like, not to belittle what therapists do, because what they do is amazing. And just because they have this expertise and these specialties, that's also amazing. But if it's not all those other things too, it's not going to work.
Can you explain a little bit about what you do and how the process, I think, empowers people?
Yeah. So the saddest thing about this whole process is that, first of all, even though we talk about it all the time, the crisis that we're in, and everyone's, everything is now posting about mental health awareness, and it's all, it's wonderful and empowering and self-care and self-help. The truth is, there is still so much shame and so much privacy about it, that, and it's still so incredibly unfamiliar to people, that they still think they have to do it the most secretive of ways and the path of least resistance of ways, which is like essentially logging onto a database or getting referrals from friends, or, as people see all the time, I see it all the time, is they go into Facebook and they post on like a community group, which and they do it anonymously. So what do they get? They get, 89 recommendations from random community members, giving the lists of their names of random therapists that they either have heard of or that they have worked with. And so then that person spends God knows how many weeks or months going down that list and cold calling all these random therapists. Maybe they'll get a call back from one or two. Maybe the ones that they get a call back from might even have availability. And then it has to be the right fit for them. So they've wasted months of time. So my process is, sometimes they're smart enough to have heard of me and they come to me right from the start. But sadly, that's pretty rare. I would say, well, actually, I would say it's half and half. I would say half the people that come to me are like, look, I heard about you. I've spent too much time, too much money, or for my child, or for myself, or for my marriage, whatever it is, and I can't I can't waste this time anymore and this money. So what they do is we set up a meeting, like an intake meeting, and I get to know them. I get to know their child, and if it's about their child, or for their child, or for their family, I meet with the child or children or family as well. And again, I'm not giving a therapy session. I'm not like, well, tell me where this began. I just want to get some information. And as much as I'm learning about what their mental health concerns are, I'm moreover learning about who they are as a person. And if it's a child or a teenager or a young adult, I will always say to them things like, tell me like who your favorite teacher was or your favorite coach was. Or if you've been in therapy before, what worked about that therapist and what didn't work about it. And then it gets them thinking about it differently, not just about like mental health, but like, I'm going to put you in a room with a grown up and I want you to feel safe with that grown up and I want you to feel motivated with that grown up. So who was your favorite coach or teacher or babysitter or camp counselor and why? And then I asked them things about like what worked for that, what made you want to show up for that person, and or conversely, tell me about the teacher or coach or babysitter that you could not connect with and why. And they start to think, and it's empowering for them because they start to think about like, oh yeah, come to think of it, like if an adult ever says to me like, I need you to, or if an adult gives me homework, or if an adult is all relaxed and loosey goosey, or if an adult is very casual and has no boundaries, all those different things that half the time it works for some people and the other half of the time it shuts people down. Those are the kinds of questions I ask, and it gets them relaxed and talking and thinking about, oh, I really want someone who does A, B, and C.
And also, as you're asking those questions, even though you're not giving therapy, I think it's also therapeutic because it gets people thinking and putting them in a good headspace. Like I'm remembering there are people who I really like in the past and people I connected with. And I know when you and I first talked, I was saying, this reminds me of when I first started dating after getting out of my long 20-year difficult marriage where I sat down and I had never done online dating. I had never done a dating profile. And I thought, a profile. And I thought, what are the qualities that I like
Right.
in other human beings? Because I wasn't looking for a serious relationship. And as I started thinking about it and listing them, I was like shocked that I had never thought about
Right.
it before. I never thought about something so significant. I had sort of just wandered into situations with people, and then if it worked out, it worked out. And if it didn't, it
Yeah.
didn't. And so I like how what you're doing is so, what's the word? Like it makes people really think hard about what they should know before going in, like to be really certain of what they need and what they prefer, rather than just, oh, I hope I get lucky and there's a good connection.
Right. I mean, it's a little bit of like a self-reflection, and it's very empowering, and it gives them a little more input and then a little more buy-in. I mean, look, even if you put two amazing people in the room together, if they're not motivated, I mean, it takes work. Therapy is not just going to happen magically by sitting in the room with somebody, even the most perfectly matched person. You have to show up because you have to be willing to be ready to do the work and work with that person. So, even though I can do all the work and get that person in the room with you and get you with that right person, in hope the fact that if you came to me, you're finally ready to do that work. But it's not, it's like romance. I mean, it's not just going to happen. It's like, all right, am I interested in this person? Do I want to make the effort with this person to make the connection and then get to know this person and then do the things that are important for that person that I want to care about? And it goes both ways. And a therapy still, again, has so much privacy and shame. But if you think about it as less about psychotherapy and more of like, this is a human to human relationship, and I want this person to be in my corner, whether
It's
you're
an
an 8-year-old boy, right?
intimate relationship.
It is. And this is your person. You're grown up, you're adult, whether you are a woman going through a horrible, horrible, frightening divorce, or whether you're an 8-year-old boy, or whether you're a 17-year-old girl, like this grown up is yours. And when you're with that person in the room, everything you share with that person is between the two of you only. And you should want to be there and want to be connecting with this person because that person is there to help you. But it takes the two of you in the room together. But what happens 99% of the time is people just think, oh, I need to go to therapy because I have anxiety. So they find a
Mhm.
therapist who works with anxiety. But that's not what therapy really is all about. All the techniques and the modalities and the types of treatment are very scientific, you hope, and are based in years and years of research and are effective, but not if you're not with the person that should be working with you in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to therapists who say that the number one thing in this relationship, or at least for it to work for the client is rapport. Do you agree with that, or do you think there's other things that are really, really important?
That is the number one thing. That is the science behind therapy. That's the part that nobody seems to know. And that's why it makes me so crazy. That's why I want to help people so badly, because the number one indicator of successful therapy is the therapeutic alliance, the therapeutic relationship. That's it. Everything else is effective, but not without that. That is 90 something percent of the indicator of successful therapy.
Okay,
The rest is just.
so say like compare it to love at first sight, which we know in our realm is not the healthiest. But is rapport something that someone will know in that first session, or does it take a little bit of time?
I mean, I think that's a great question. And I don't know that there's science behind how long that takes. But what I say to people is my goal is to check as many boxes for you as possible, which will expedite and facilitate this entire process for you. So if I've checked every single box possible, whether it's like I want somebody who's 6'3" and a brunette and from this small village and who works in this industry, and if it's like a dating app, and the rest of it has to be built in the human connection, at least you're not starting from square one, you're starting from square 50. And then, yes, the hope is that since I've checked all those boxes, you two will connect very quickly. But sometimes if you don't check any of those boxes, I mean, that's why people waste years in therapy and say therapy doesn't work, because there's no connection there. So rapport and trust between two people does take time. And I guess the reason there's no kind of science or formula behind that is because, look, this is human nature. At the end of the day, you can't really collect data on like how many different types of people there are and how long it takes different people to trust another human. But you certainly know that you can expedite that process by eliminating all the other factors that that person does not want to like in a person. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
And you just got a hard question that I should have expected. In your experience, do you think people in high conflict relationships with a history of domestic violence should be forced into what I imagine it says reunification therapy? So do you know what that is?
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't think I'm expert enough to answer a sensitive question about that. I mean, high conflict divorce is kind of, as you know, more than anybody, an animal of its own. And I know at the end of the day, you're dealing with humans and relationship, and I'm sure there is research to indicate there are certain types of therapy that work for high conflict situations, but I can't speak to reunification therapy and its effectiveness. I don't know enough. I don't work with that specific population, and there are so many variables that come into play with high conflict divorce, so many layers to that, I would imagine, where maybe there are situations where those two people should never be in a room together ever again. I don't know. And maybe there are some situations where if they had the right therapy at the right time in their struggling marriage, then maybe there are things they can work through. But unfortunately, I'm not expert enough to answer that question.
Yeah, I think that was a
I'm
great answer.
sorry. I wish yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not a person who just gives an answer just to give an answer. I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah, I really
yeah.
don't know.
No, that's good. So back to like connecting people, how important are skills and intuition? I mean, you do this, but I don't know if this is the kind of thing that someone could learn to do. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit about your skills and intuition. I mean, besides, 30 years being in this field.
I mean, I think that's kind of what makes me who I am and what makes me confident about what I'm doing and what makes my business, Family Consultants, work, because I do have both. And I think intuition is kind of like that thing we were talking about earlier, where it's really difficult to measure.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't very intuitive when it comes to making choices about relationships and friendships and dating or finding the right people to put in their universe. And I just have always had really good intuition about people. I can read people. I'm not wrong. I'm not really wrong about people. I mean, I can say that like kind of confidently. I know it sounds kind of strange. I always say I'm a woman with very few skills, but this is what I can do. And
That's a big one. I
yeah,
mean, that's a good one
I can
to
just
make your way through the world. with
Yeah,
that skill.
I can't do a lot of other things, but I can read people, connect people, understand people, recognize who would work well with another person, um, connect friends, and it's not just in the therapy world. It's the human nature world. Um, and my skill set, of course, is not only my certification and my licensure and my training and my master's degree, but the 30 years of experience it has gone, hand in hand with my intuition. Could I do this with one and not the other? I would say no. I would say the problem with all these algorithms and databases out there and all these Better Help and Psychology Today and all of it is, it's just an algorithm. It's just a computer system with a skill set to determine, oh, you check the boxes of anxiety and OCD and divorce. Therefore, this algorithm slash skill set puts you towards these, 175 people in Fairfield, Connecticut. Whereas without the intuition piece, that's what everybody's been dealing with, is an algorithm that pretends to get to know you and what you're looking for and point you in a direction of, 100, whatever, or 1,000 different therapists all over the country that are going to log into therapy and do it over Zoom. I mean, that's an algorithm that is not an indicator of success. And that is not a relationship, an intimate, personal relationship with your therapist, who is going to basically be hearing your most private and personal, shameful pieces of your soul. You're to think that people have so much shame and so little faith in this mental health system, to think that they should just go into an algorithm and log into a database that pretends to understand their deepest, most painful personal struggles and then spit it out and put them into a therapy where they're going to be monitoring you on a computer system. It's I think it fits a need, maybe.
But it sounds dehumanizing.
It's dehumanizing, and it devalues the real beauty of what the therapy can be. And therapy does not have to be something you're in for 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, whatever. It can be with the right person, going in for a few months or going in for 6 or 8 months and being like, all right, I'm going to take a break now. And then I'll come back to you if something else comes up in my life. It doesn't have to be the way we always historically believed it was, years and years ago with like Freud and psychoanalysis, where you were like, I'm in therapy 3 times a week for 25 years. I mean, that's effective for some people, but that is not what kind of modern day therapy. You can do so many different types of therapy as long as it's with the right person. I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered the question now.
You
I'm
did,
sorry, I
you
got
did,
off
you
topic.
definitely you did, and then
Okay.
some. So yeah, that was a great answer. And as you were talking, I was thinking about my therapist as I was exiting my marriage for those last couple of years, and I can't remember how I found her, but I think one of the things I asked was something about addiction, because I thought that was the issue when that wasn't the main issue. And she had said something like, I don't have experience with that, but I do have extensive experience with trauma. And I didn't know what trauma was at the time. I didn't know what I was dealing with. And I really liked how forthright she was to say, this is what I don't know. I don't know what you're saying you think you need, but I think, like, she sensed that she could help me with whatever it was. And I did see her for like a few months, and then a few months at a time, and then stop. But it was an awesome connection,
That's amazing.
and it was really helpful. And it didn't go on for years. And sometimes I'd go back and I'd just be like, Judy, can I just talk to you? And she's like, you're fine. I'm like, but I love you. Like, I want to just
That
talk
is
to you.
exactly what you want to say. And I hear that all the time about the people that I connect with, the therapist. Like, I love them so much.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not seeing them anymore, or
Yeah.
I'm doing well now. But like, there's a love there. There's a respect there, and there's a love there. And what's interesting is that the clinicians I send people, I don't charge the clinicians anything for like any of these referrals. I just send them. I also know what the clinicians like to do and who they love to work with. And I ask all the professionals the same types of questions that I ask the clients. Like, when I'm getting to know a new person, and I get to know new therapists like every single week. There's new people that I get to meet. And I say to them, like, not just like, what type of therapy do you do and what type of expertise do you have, but like who do you love to work with and why? What gets you excited? You know, what kind of patient or client lights you up when they walk in the room? And I want to know that. And then they always smile, and then they tell me what their favorite, and some of them are so nuanced and fascinating, you know, and detailed.
Mhm.
So when I get a client like that and I call this person up, I'm like, you are going to love this client, this is what she's all about or whatever. They're so excited. So when those two people meet each other, they are both excited to meet each other, as opposed to um, you know, a person who's struggling and kind of gets an appointment with a professional who's like, okay, like a doctor, like, okay, I have you for the next 45 minutes. Instead, this person's like, oh my God, Lauren already told me all about you. I'm so excited to meet you. You don't have to start from square one because I've got a lot of the background. Let's
Wow.
let's talk. And it's just like it takes it helps the both of them. Like you've no idea. You saved us so many months of like, let's get to know each other a little bit because you've already checked all those boxes. Now it's like, let's get started. And so the
Yeah.
clinician is excited. So when the clinician's excited, they're doing better work as well.
I just had the thought, like, you could, I know this is not your field, but this is how it is with people searching for the right divorce attorney.
Yes, it's such
Like, it's
a
going to be,
personal thing too.
yeah, I
Exactly.
know. People will often ask us, do you know someone down here? And I'm like, the best thing that I can do, because I don't know everybody, obviously, but I'll say all these interviews I do with professionals, because I do interview a lot of attorneys, watch, like, take a look and see if you like their style, and then you can make a decision. That's part of the reason why we do them, is
Right.
so that people can come and strut their stuff, but also our community can see, like, that one I would never get along with, but that one I
Exactly.
really like.
And we should have more faith in ourselves, even if we're not the most intuitive of people. Like everybody knows when they're giving themselves enough credit. You all know what kind of people you like to connect with and what kind of people turn you off right away. So if you're just going to hire an attorney that somebody else gave you their name or like 10 other people recommended, if they're not the right person for you, you're going to know right away. You're not going to stick with that person and give them so much of your money and your time during your most vulnerable time of your life and waste that time thinking, well, this is the guy that everybody else likes. Like, that's not going to help you. That's a,
Unfortunately, that's what happens a lot in our
yeah,
community, because there's this sense of like, well, I should,
because
and listening
everybody,
to other
right.
people. Yeah.
And I don't know how many divorce attorneys there are, for example, in Fairfield County, but I mean, there must be a few thousand therapists in Fairfield County. So when people come to me and say, like, I can't get in anywhere, I'm on the wait list, or how are you going to get my child in? There's nobody available. I am like, not only will I get your child in to see the right person, but there are so many amazing people that are available. You just don't know how to find them. So let me cut out all that noise for you. Let me do all the legwork for you and just spoon feed you the right person. So you start.
Yeah. You
Same thing.
actually, I was going to make sure that we covered that. I was going to say that so many people say that, like, a therapist that I really want is hard to get an appointment with. Like, it's impossible. There's all these lists, but I like how you have an in with all these different people that you can get a hold of them and say, I have a client that you're going to love. Because a lot of us are flexible.
Yes,
We can be like, I don't have space, but I can find some space for you.
exactly, Lisa. That's what happens all the time. So I mean, most of the time I'm finding the right therapist um, who might not necessarily be booked solid. But even when I'm going to that go-to person that's like booked solid and I call, they're like, oh my God, definitely send them. I'm so excited. This is exactly the kind of client I love to work with. And I'm like, I know. That's why I went, that's the whole point. That's the magic behind all of it. And, the people that are booked solid are the ones, and I'm sure they're wonderful, and I know many of them, but they're the ones that the pediatricians can have the same 3 or 4 business cards in their drawer. The school, middle school, and the high school have the same 3 or 4 business cards in their drawer, and they're all giving out the same names because they don't have time to go out there and vet new professionals. The physicians and the schools, they're booked solid. So I'm doing all that legwork for them. And so sometimes pediatricians and schools will send the students to me because they're like, look, I can give you 3 names, but I don't know if they're the right fit for you or your child or if they're taking new clients. So go to family consultants, let them do all this work for you. And that way I know as your child's pediatrician that your kid's going to start therapy in 2 weeks, as opposed to like, I can give you the name of, Joe Schmo, but I don't think he's taking new clients until June. That
Mhm.
doesn't really help a mother who's freaking out about her child.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and our community is totally crisis
Yeah,
driven. So it's like, I need something now. I cannot wait even a
right,
couple of weeks. Well, a couple of weeks maybe, but
right,
not like months.
right. I mean, I spoke to a client a few weeks ago who was like, I can't believe you did this. My child was on a wait list for 8 months. I'm like, I don't even understand what kind of therapy practice would put somebody on a wait list for 8 months. And what does that mean? You just, whatever random therapist out of your 30 therapists, whichever first one becomes available, that's the one your child's going to see. How effective is that?
Right. And it's approaching something from a point of desperation.
Right. And first,
So
come, first served. Like, that's not therapy's like you said, like a divorce attorney, like this is the real deal. This is not just I need someone to come, I hate to diminish like, housework, but like I need someone to come, paint my walls. Like there are different varying skills and that kind of work as well, but like it's not a personal relationship.
right.
So yes, in
Again,
some ways you can take the first person that's available, the painter can come and help you to paint your wall, but like they're not going to be working with you for the next 6 months about your deepest, darkest secrets.
right.
You don't want the first person available to be doing that with you.
Right. Like it requires certain talents and skills and really an investment in you as a human being,
Right.
like we've been saying. Like when we first met, I was saying, it sounds like you give them the unicorn. Like, how do you work with your database? Like, how do you know so many people and so intimately on a certain level to be able to say, that's the one?
So it's a great question because there are many times where I meet with a new family or a new adult or client, or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I have somebody in mind for you. I know this. I have a couple of names of people in my head, but oftentimes the things they're coming to me with are so unique, or their interests and their wishes are so unique that I might not have somebody in mind. And so I keep researching and reaching out to other professionals that I know and casting a wider web and then I meet with new people until I do find that unicorn for them. So sometimes that unicorn is somebody I've already met with in my like quote database, which of course I don't like to, it's a hard word to use because I always think of a database as like so impersonal, but yeah, it is, it's like a Rolodex of all the people that I've met with, but it's ever changing and ever growing because if I don't have the person that also likes all the 5 different things this child said he or she also really likes, I'm going to reach out to the people that I know that might know the right people that could then introduce me to them. And then I'm going to meet with them, have a genuine conversation, and then say, like, do you think this child will be a good fit for you? I think it sounds like you're the right person for them. And then we take it from there.
Yeah. When you were saying that, it reminds me of the line that we always use saying that our content is driven by our clients and how if we can't answer something, I love being sent out to find somebody who can,
Exactly.
and then everyone benefits from it. So it's a very parallel
That's so
to
true.
the way we do business.
Right, because the person you end up finding during your research is also going to benefit, even though they're a professional. They're going to be excited to work with this unique client that's struggling for all the different reasons that you connected the two of them together.
And there are other people with the same issues that I'm now going to be like, ooh, I can recommend this person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So how can people find you, Lauren?
So I have a website, familyconsultantsofwestport.com, and I'm on Instagram, obviously.
Yeah.
They can call me and text me. They can email me. I don't know if you want to say my email address or just find it,
You
but
you you could say it if you want, but they can find you on Instagram and
yeah, they can find me.
website.
It's at Family Consultants on Instagram, and my website I gave, and of course email Lauren at Family Consultants of Westport. And I should say, like I know I'm primarily in Fairfield County just because that's kind of where I am, and so that's organically how I get most of my clients, or through their friends and family members in the Connecticut area. But I do help families all across the country. Um,
That's good to know. I'm really glad you said that because
yeah,
I think people are like, oh, but I'm not anywhere near there.
right, right. I mean, obviously, even if somebody calls me from, Hamden, Connecticut, I don't have a very wide web in Hamden, Connecticut. So I'm going to start a genuine news search in Hamden, Connecticut. It doesn't matter if it's Hamden, Connecticut or, Los Angeles. It's the same thing. Like I'm going to start with a few people that I know and then keep going and meeting new professionals until I find the right person for that family or that individual. So, yeah.
Great. Well, I love what you do. I love having resources like you that nobody would normally know exists.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing. I don't know if there's other people that do the amazing work that you do, but you've found this niche for yourself because of your life experience and your passion and your, desire to help people and connect people. And what I do is the very same thing. Like, I found a niche. There was nobody doing what I do. That doesn't
Mhm.
exist. This like business model doesn't exist. It doesn't. So I'm here to like help people to make this easier for people, like to just connect the dots for people
Yeah.
the same way you
Oh,
are.
thank you. Well, yeah, it's wonderful. Well, thank you again, Lauren, for coming on. And I have a feeling people will be getting in
Well,
touch with you.
I really appreciate the time, Lisa, and I think what you do is amazing. And I know that your people are suffering, and that's horrible. And if I can help these families in any way to find them the right people, then this is a beautiful thing.
It's certainly anything to save time, money, and precious
Yes,
energy.
right, exactly. I
All
agree.
right. I'll talk
All
to you
right,
later.
thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.